What caused you to think him never visiting again after being in someone's home? Story 1, I had a new friend in middle school, and I went over her house for a sleepover. It was fun at first because we were just playing outside. Then she shows me her creepy, unfinished basement with a rabbit hutch and some bunnies. She tells me how sad she was when one of her bunnies died recently, and how her older brother made her laugh by making his corpse dance. Her dad is drinking in the kitchen. Big beer gut. Something about him makes me feel uneasy. She shows me a room with a big fish hanging on the wall and flies around its eyes. She says we can either sleep in here on the couches or in her bedroom. Then she tells me that her mom and brother sleep at her room with her every night, and they lock the door. I ask why. She says, ghosts. I'm thinking, what about your dad? Don't ask it aloud because I figure it's really him they're hiding from. Then I fake a stomach ache and had her mom take me home. Edit, because everyone's asking. We were about 12 years old at the time. My mom spoke to her mom over the phone when we made the plans. Her mom was a nice, seemingly normal lady. There was no reason for my mom to be concerned. I don't think there would have been a reason for concern, even if she had met the father. It's not like the dude was some horrific character straight out of Deliverance. Same as she toured the house. It was a totally normal house, albeit old, big, and therefore creepy. And the fish wasn't rotting. It was taxidermy. There were just some gnats around its eyes for whatever reason. I was still going to sleep there until my friend said her mom and brother slept in her room at night because of ghosts. And she told me this fact with the same level of excitement that she told me the story about her brother making the dead bunny dance. For all I know, she was just with me because she got a thrill out of being creepy. She was into the macabre and ended up being goth and working at Hot Topic when we were in high school. Story 2, a work friend invited me over to his house to watch a hockey game. So I said, sure, why not? I bought a 6-pack of beers and he said, sweet. He just put them in his fridge. He proceeded to pour himself scotch, but never asking me I wanted to have a drink. Then he pulled out some leftovers and made himself a dish, and again, he never asked me if I was hungry. Then I just asked for a beer that I had bought, and he said I guess, but I was going to save them for another time. I left after the game, and it's been really a core at work. Story 3, finally went to a girl's house that I had been talking to for a little while. We were messing around on the couch. Things were advancing, and she asked to move to the bed. We get in the room, and I noticed a foul smell. I started looking around and saw a pile of dog on the floor. NBD, we had been out for a few hours and accidents happened. I told her about it, and she said, oh no, like she was surprised, and went to the bathroom to get things to clean it up. While she was in the bathroom, I spotted 3 separate piles of, and one of them almost petrified, and had I been there for a few days, I told her I didn't feel well and was going to go home. I never saw her again, lol. Story 4, a failed scorpion farm. Made the horrendous mistake of spending the night at my ex's parents' house. I woke up to the feeling of something crawling on me. I soon realized there were 3 somethings. I flipped on the light and discovered scorpions. There are no scorpions native to our area. I freak out, swat them off, and then run to the bathroom to strip and check for more. And when I turn on the light, several scorpions on the wall, scattered like roaches. I wake up the ex because seriously, WTF. Apparently, when he was younger, he thought ant farms were boring and decided to order scorpions on the internet and make a scorpion farm instead. The survivors of his arachnid Mad Max setup escaped into the house, where a few turned into an insane amount. The very wealthy parents chose to live with the scorpions rather than calling exterminator. Never went back. Edit 2 of the 3 were in my clothes, and 1 was on my face. Definitely not my finest moment. Story 5, oh yeah. Did we mention we got bed bugs? You should be okay, though. Might want to give someone a heads up about that in advance, so they cannot come. Story 6, met my biological father and half-siblings when I was 12. Spent a night at his house to get to know my family. Proceeded to spend that entire night feeling disgusting, watching roaches crawl across the TV, trailing from the ceiling down the wall into the trash can, crawling all over the piles of actual garbage laying on the bedroom floors. I did not use the bathroom that night. It was a very long night. Story 7, they kept playing a game of who can make the guests more uncomfortable, and both were winning. Also, I learned that dinner was too much to ask for at a dinner party. Story 8, their dog on my shoe because I was in her peeing zone, which happened to be right in the doorway to their kitchen. She just let the dog pee there instead of bothering teaching her to go outside. Sadly, my interactions with this woman weren't up to me, but I think that was the last time I went to that house in particular. She also let her cat between the wall and dishwasher in her next house for about 2 years straight, and didn't even notice until she moved out. She's also a hoarder, and her place is always crammed to the brim with furniture. This person no longer has animals. Thankfully, the dog went to another owner. I hope they treated her better. Story 9, their house smelled so strongly of dog that I might as well have tied their dog to my face. They only had 1 medium-sized dog that spent most of its time in the backyard. Story 10, I once went to a party at someone's house in Florida at night. We were all hanging out in the backyard, so the house looked okay from the outside. I asked the host if I could use his bathroom. and I noticed the wallpaper looked kind of fuzzy, but I chalked it up to being tipsy. It wasn't until he flicked the light switch on that the fuzzy wallpaper was in fact a huge roach infestation, and they scattered everywhere, and even more ran away from us when he put the toilet seat down for me and left. I was too scared to move, let alone sit and pee, so I just sped walked right the up out of the whole house and held my pee until I got home. I have no idea how they were okay living in that house with a trillion roach roomies. Story 11, he offered a roast, but there was smoke coming out of his over, and it looked like he was about to crawl out the window. He said it was steam from the steamed clams we were going to be having. Then he came out with hamburgers and french fries. When I asked him about this, as in I thought we were having steamed clams, he said no, steamed hams, and said it was a regional dialect from just one small town. He suddenly claimed to be tired, and there was bright light and smoke and heat coming from his kitchen. I asked him about that. He claimed that it was the northern lights. Yes, he told me that the northern lights, at that time of year in that part of the country, was localized entirely in his kitchen, and he refused to let me see it. It told him that he steamed a good ham, but his mother was yelling about the house being on fire. If he can't be a good enough host to let me see the northern lights in his kitchen, I'm not going back. Story 12, I was the new kid in the 6th grade and quickly made friends with this one girl. I think she kind of jumped at the chance to be friends with the one person who knew literally nothing about her. She was really nice to me, but also kind of really strange. Like she'd growl at people and she'd draw wolves on every single surface from the classroom to her bedroom. But nonetheless, we were both in an advanced art program, so we saw each other more than I saw other people in my grade, and I wasn't in a position to reject friendship. Went to her house once, never went back. When we entered the home, it smelled heavily of dog urine, but there wasn't a dog. When I asked if she had a dog, her response was no. Not since the accident. Then there was an uncomfortable silence, and she just started laughing uncontrollably. Red flag. I stayed because my mother wasn't picking me up until a bit later, and I didn't exactly know how to walk home. Well, my mother didn't pick me up, and I was about to exit the house. The girl's mom literally ran after me and grabbed me and brought me back upstairs. She shook my shoulders, screaming I couldn't leave right now. I started freaking out, not knowing what was happening. The girl's mom is frantically running around to all the windows and screaming at someone outside in a language I don't understand. My mom calls the house and is also freaking out. The girl's mom wouldn't let her talk to me, and she also just watched me get dragged back by this woman. So she calls the police. It escalates and turns into like a mini hostage kind of situation. There was a guy outside that the girl's mom used to date, and he wanted something from her, and if I left, he'd run into the house when the door opened. So I couldn't leave. Cops come. The girl's mom gives me a plastic shopping bag duct taped everywhere and tells me under no circumstances am I allowed to look inside of it, and that I had to hand it to the man outside. I didn't want to do that, but it seems like it's the only way I'm getting out of there. It was rounded out by the contents, and I remember it bearing the weight of a bowling ball. I actually peed on myself. I was so scared, didn't know what else to do, so I took the bag and started to leave the house. When I made it to the exit, I straight up yeeted the bag and ran to my mother. I have no clue where the guy was. I think at that point he was already apprehended by the police. Whole time this was happening, the girl who I was there to hang out with was sitting on the table in her kitchen, eating cereal like a dog, not at all fazed by the series of events happening in front of her. We had to go to the police station that night, and because it was so late when I got home, I didn't go to school the next day. That day I missed school. The girl told everyone I was insane, and then when we hung out, I went crazy, and I peed myself for no absolutely reason. We don't talk anymore, edit spelling. Story 13 was not offered any form of bedding. Slept on the floor while they slept on the bed. Edit, there were 3 of us, and we were both invited. Both guests slept on the floor. This has happened multiple times, and I swear I will not go back now I can drive. Story 14, walking from the mall one day. I took a different block than I normally did. I passed a house with a rusted old vehicle in the driveway, and just as I pass, roaches scatter in broad daylight. A month or so passes, and I'm hanging out with my buddy. He says, I met some dude who's pretty cool. Want to go over to his place? Sure, I reply. We pull up. No, up to that same house from the beginning of the story. Same car, same roaches. The guy was okay to hang out with, it turns out, but everything else that happened in that house was the thing of nightmares. And yes, the roaches live inside too. One dad and mom hanging out on dirty couch. Dad in his underwear, two emaciated dogs, a Great Dane with some horrible joint issue or displaced leg socket limping around, and a Chihuahua constantly rubbing his all over the carpet. 3 no running water. It had to be turned on from the mains, as everything leaked in the house if they left it on. For cigarettes put out on tables, desks, literally anywhere possible. 5, the kid literally BB-cheeing inside his room. 6, the same kid spray painted his room black. 7, that kid's brother sleepwalking and peeing on the kitchen floor. He cleans it up with a towel laying on the floor and leaves it there once he's done. 8, that same kitchen has stacks of dishes, migrating out from the sink onto every inch of the counter. Me and my buddy ask if he has any snacks. He comes back with a bag of chips, jar of mayonnaise, can of corn, and can of tuna. Mix it all up and proceeds to double dip all day, not to mention I hate tuna. But that's my issue. Wash it down with a bottle of Shasta Cola with sand on it. It's August. 9 Dad comes in to chat with the guys and talks about his gout for an hour. 10 Dude's cousin is living there because she got kicked out of her house. She's fat and trashy and lonely, so she tries to hang with us, sitting on a nasty stained carpet, picking her feet while eating a bag of Cheetos, and without shame asks if we'd like any. Now granted, this all took place on mostly separate occasions, and I kept going back. But whoa boy, that family was something else, and every time I left, I thought to myself, that's it, I'm never coming back. I had a buddy I visited who played cat turd golf in his house because there were cat turds caked onto the carpeting everywhere. I believe an 8-iron was the club of choice. Story 15, I had an almost rich friend. Almost meaning that his parents were well-to-do, they just up and gave him a house, and his grandma was in the oil business, would leave 6-figure dividend checks uncashed on her tables, because who cares? So he moves into his detached garage, halfway, turns it into an apartment, and rents out the house to another friend. I didn't go over there often, but I knew that he hadn't sprung for improvements to the apartment like a toilet or running water. Understandable. I guess he would just go in the house to use the bathroom. I visited one day. His apartment was trashed. Used pizza boxes were everywhere. Dirty dishes, dirty clothes, etc. All of that I could understand this was his house, his living space. Who was I to judge? Then I noticed two things: a definite dog smell and his penchant for Gatorade. The dog was obviously from the other friend's dog, except that it tracked it into the apartment, and my friend had tracked it all around, mooshing it into the shitty carpet. I was about to comment on him storing Gatorade all along the shelf near his computer and how keeping it cold would be better, until I realized that these were already used. The bottles were full of what I was sure wasn't Gatorade, but he was almost rich, so he was better than me, according to him. Story 16, in grade K, I had a sleepover with one of my mom's friend's kid, who was also in grade K. First off, I brought my Game Boy. He also had a Game Boy. The difference was that his was covered in snot and other gross dried substances. Of course, he tried to switch his with mine on multiple occasions. Secondly, he put on his mom's see-through black panties. That was enough for me. Story 17, I ended up being left alone with friend's mom. The women spent 30 minutes telling me every outlandish conspiracy theory in the book. Asked for my help with her Facebook account, because she was positive the government was tracking her with it, because she knew that the end of times was coming and who God was going to punish. She said a lot, and I don't remember half of it, because my brain couldn't process the fact someone thought and believed all this. Love the rest of the family, though. Story 18, first thing, being threatened to have my cut off and possibly shot. I was meeting her parents for the first time. Never had any problems with the girl, wanted to meet her family. Story 19, the pile of dishes in the sink with spiderwebs on it. Upon being asked what the deal was, she told me that a couple of years ago, her mom decided she wasn't doing the dishes anymore. They got divorced, and the rest of the family swapped to paper plates. No one will do them out of spite, so they've been there for more than 2 to 3 years by the time I saw it. It's been 5 years since, and I doubt they've been touched. Story 20, scissors stuck in the ceiling. Like the whole living room, kitchen area ceiling was covered with scissors. Edit, so there was like 30 pairs at least. And this was in a trailer house, so all I could think about was how horrifying it would be to be in this death trap in a bad storm or tornado. When I was introduced to the owner of the now dubbed Scissor house, all my questions were answered, and the answer is meth. I didn't ask about the scissors. I made my friend take me home. I stayed maybe 10 minutes total. Being in a Scissor house with a bunch of crackheads is not how I like to spend my Friday nights. Story 21, their bathroom floor was carpet, and it was always wet. It went through my shoes and got my socks wet. First time, maybe someone just showered. Second time, nope, I can't live like this. Story 22, me and a girl had been sexting each other for most of the afternoon. She was home alone, so I decided to go around hers. First thing I noticed was there was junk piled everywhere, and things had a layer of dust on them, and house smelt really badly of mustiness and wet dog, but whatever. Once I retrieved my discarded clothing from the floor, once I was done, a layer of dog hair had attached itself to my shirt and jeans. The bathroom was the worst. Went to go and get myself cleaned up. The shower was absolutely filthy, and the junk was still piled up in there. However, while peeing, I turned to the left and noticed an entire colony of dead spiders on the wall and black mold covering the corners of the ceiling. I finished up, drove home, and had a very long shower. Story 23, in high school, a friend's house was missing most of the carpet, and her room was covered in mud from her St. Bernard. The kitchen never had any food and was the kind of house you didn't want to eat from anyway. The furniture was all dirty and smelled weird too. It was the most uncomfortable night of my life. I felt bad for her because she didn't understand that was no way to live. I imagine Shed lived like that her whole life. Story 24. The house was over 100 years old, I think. Very thin walls, water from a well. The tub was filled with moldy books and papers. The floor in front of the bathtub was rotted and caved in. The house was filled with stacks of newspapers and boxes from floor to ceiling, and you had to navigate through them. The owner collected porcelain dolls and had them displayed in various places, many just still in boxes. The living room had a small opening between the newspaper columns to an old TV surrounded by the dolls and a single chair to watch it. But the worst part, I kept thinking there were odd curtains pinned to the roof. No, they were billowing nets of spider webs, webs so dense that they looked like fabric and were just hanging like strung curtains, spiders crawling all over the roof, pledged to never return. I found out many years later that it burned down. Story 25. My friend didn't tell me they had bed bugs until a week after I'd gone home. My room got infested and all my furniture had to be tossed, including the dresser my mom had painted for me when I was a kid. Story 26. I slept over at a friend's house, and not only was her house dark and smelled weird, but her dad immediately gave me weird vibes. I kind of let it go because maybe I just wasn't used to her house smell, and maybe the dad was just kind of intense. I brush it off. A lot of small things happen that are strange to me, like not feeding us the entire day, insisting we slept top and tail, or sending us to bed super early. I just brush it all off, wake up early the next morning, and the dad is just standing there watching the two of us sleep. He sees me awake and doesn't even say anything or acknowledge his weird behavior. That was the moment I was like, oh, you're never coming here again. Story 27. Walked in my friend's living room, and his wall-to-ceiling Nazi memorabilia. Him talking flags, giant metal swastikas, uniforms, the whole lot. I just backed out. Later learned his dad is an antique dealer, and they were all being sold to some sort of institute. Still scare me shitless. I thought I wandered into a trap. Story 28. So many cats. Cats were locked inside all day, and they never cleaned up after them. Every surface in the house had cat food and or cat on it. Kitchen, stove had cat on it. Take a seat on the couch. But mind the cat. No idea what the floor was made of because it was covered in newspaper, fur, food. And you guessed it, cat. No idea how the smell hadn't killed them. Story 29. Freshman year, in someone's dorm. A yellow sock sitting on top of the keyboard, and a bottle of dark orange liquid in a Coke bottle on the floor next to it. Story 30. Was supposed to be staying over, and I was attacked by fleas. Noped right out of there right then, after dousing my legs in Raid flea killer that they had sitting around. Story 31. On the last day of my last visit, I noticed my mom's smoke detector was lying broken on the shelf. Having accrued a layer of dust already, I asked about it, and mentioned that I am concerned for her safety, particularly given that she uses a fireplace for house heating, and as gas appliances CO hazard. I offered to go pick up a new one as I was shopping for road trip supplies. She got angry. I was judging her, which her child wouldn't shall do, yelled at me, got on my face, followed me out the door to my car, and stood in the street, furious. As I left, I have never been back. Story 32. I was a mental health case manager a few years ago, so I would do home and school visits to make my clients' lives easier. I had this one client who lived in a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with her 2 parents and 11 siblings, 2 cats and 3 dogs. When I walked in, I almost dry heaved due to the smell, and then it just got worse from there. I stood up for our entire 1-hour session. I cut it down to 45 minutes because there was dog, some roaches, probably dog pee, and some mysterious crusty white substance on the couch, and the floor was awful too. There was moldy food sitting on the coffee table, and rotten milk in what I'm guessing was a bowl of cereal. I had to call CPS due to these kids' living environment, and then I insisted that I either see the child at school or the family come to the clinic. I was paranoid that I had picked up some bed bugs or lice or fleas or something, and went home and stripped in the garage. I felt so bad because I know that my client had no choice but to live with her family in that house, and that mom and dad had to work multiple jobs, each to be able to afford just to keep a roof over their family's head. So there was no time for much else. Fortunately, with the help of some resources through CPS, my client showed me pictures of her new house, which was really just her old house with clean floors, new furniture, fresh food, etc. Story 33. Basically a hoarder situation. Everything was just dirty. Their dogs smelled terrible. I hated sitting on the couch because I'm sure it hasn't been cleaned in like 60 years. Story 34. Filth, just everywhere. And just weird stuff like in the garage. There was a dirty spatula on the seat of the brand new Harley. I saw one of the kids open a door on the coffee table, and I saw a bowl full of what I'm guessing was either really old milk from cereal or yellowed cottage cheese. Right inside the front door was a huge pile of shoes, like a pile of shoes. 5 people lived in that house, and I think each person had 10 pairs of shoes in that pile. I'm pretty sure everyone had some sort of foot fungus because the whole pile smelled like garbage and Fritos. We keep getting offers to stay with them when we're in town. But no, hard pass. Story 35, their giant dogs had no manners. I love puppers, but their huskies jumped on me and scratched me up the second I walked in the door and were underfoot barking and tripping me literally the whole time I was there. I was trying to ignore them and not validate the behavior. Then the unneutered male started my leg. My friend just laughed and said, "Oh, ignore him. How? Dog cat hair everywhere, couches, kitchen table, counters. I'm a dog person and even had dogs in my home before, so nothing against animals. There was the laundry room, which was the dog's shitting room with dried and new, which stank up the house. Also a random in the bathroom." Story 36, stayed the night at some of my friend's house. They had just got an older house that they all roomed in, unfortunately. All of them had gotten scabies and waited to tell me until the morning after of drinking and me spending the night on the couch. Had to do all kinds of extensive creams and treatments to get rid of. Got drunk at a party, and one of my friend's girlfriend offered to take me to their house because I was too drunk to drive, which I appreciated. But when I woke up the next morning, the first thing I saw was the house completely covered in very unshy, very socialized roaches. Not the big ones, the little ones that completely just take over. I was so uncomfortable and stranded in a house in the middle of nowhere for over 2 hours. Scratching every minute. Story 37, her older sister was in trouble and arguing with her parents the whole time for having taken pics of herself, and they were discovered on the family computer. Her excuse was to see if her nipples were even. In addition, my friend's dad took she and I to the store to get some veggies for dinner. When we returned to her home, the mom and dad were completely uninvolved in the making of dinner. Not a problem. So my friend and I made dinner. She chopped the celery and threw out the remainder that wasn't going to be used, not worth keeping. Her dad comes down to eat later, sees the wasted celery, and starts reprimanding the friend for wasting so much food he spent money on. Towards the end of the night, he was passive-aggressively apologizing to us, saying to his daughter, "We scared your friend away. She's never going to visit again," while I was completely in earshot. Just all-around uncomfortable situation for a friend. Yeah, I didn't go back. Story 38, a friend from school mother thought I was extremely rude because I stuttered in front of her. Then because of the stuttered and the embarrassment I felt, I decided to pick my words carefully. She said directly to me, a 12-year-old, that I was extremely rude. Now, age 20, I still have a massive fear of meeting anyone's parents. Story 39, had the sexy time with a girl at her place. Was under the impression that her kids weren't home. We both fell asleep in the buff. A little bit later, I hear this little kid voice asking if he can crawl up in bed. His mom is like, "Sure, honey," and scoots over, so he can lay between us. Noped right the out of there. Story 40, my buddy, who shall remain nameless, invited me round once, to where he lived with his mom and dad. There was a strange air about the place. He slept on a mattress on the floor. There were ungodly amounts of trinkets and bits of junk everywhere. Dust on everything. It just didn't feel healthy somehow. There was a creepy, musty air about the place. Several days late, he came into work, severely beaten up by his dad, just for swearing. He was in his 30s at the time. I'm still friends with him, offer him support, and keep him company. But me, I'm not going round there again. Story 41, I spent the night in the guest bedroom, and the first thing I saw when I opened my eyes the next morning was a pile of rat droppings on the pillow next to me. Story 42, growing up, I was good friends with a girl whose brother had passed away in his teens unexpectedly. They were a really nice family, and I really enjoyed spending time with her. About 3 years after her brother passed away, we were at her house playing, and we smelled this horrible smell that was coming from his old room. She was so embarrassed, and just said it happened. Sometimes I tell my mom, but she doesn't care, so we decided to investigate, because at 12 years old, that's totally normal. Well, her brother had about 4 ferrets, and they had reproduced at some point. There were about 10 dead ferrets, a dead turtle in a tank, surrounded in feces and mess, moldy petrified food, and all of his dirty laundry. Turns out his mom was so sad from him passing, she just literally left his room the way it was, animals and all. I told my mom what happened, and her suggestion was to always have her over at our house from now on, which was for the best. Story 43, suddenly the card game we were playing had all these weird rules that only ever seemed to benefit the host. I called him out on it, only to get told my house my rules. Story 44, they have 3 dogs. All 3 dogs are not house-trained. They just pee in all over the house. They prefer the kitchen. This wouldn't be too much a deal if the people in the house cleaned up after them. No one cleans the house. Once you walk in, your nose is met with a powerful smell of pee and mixed in whatever the else is going on in the house. The house is dirty all around. The carpets in one room are torn out. House is falling apart. Everyone is too lazy to clean, but not lazy to keep up with their entertainment needs. Story 45, my wife's brother's trailer. I've been there a few times, but I think I'm done now. They have 4 kids with 1 more on the way. There's just a gross film over everything. The carpet is all nasty. The kitchen is never clean. Toys are scattered all over, and the walls are covered in crayon markers. I don't even really want to sit anywhere. Story 46, my ex's parent house was disgusting. They had 2 dogs they allowed to pee pretty much anywhere, and they kept both the litter box and the dirty dishes in the shower. Story 47, dirty bongs and moldy dishes all over the place. Then her kid sister came down with a rat and said, "This is my new rat. I kill the other one, she stabbed it in the eyes." Story 48, my absolute best friend. Love her to death. Have been best friends since we were in elementary school. We're 28 now, her parents were divorced, and the last time I slept over at her mom's house, I found a bug crawling on my back. I don't know what it was, but it latched on. I was so skeeved out I left in the middle of the night and walked home like 2 blocks down in suburbia. Story 49, I will never again visit my BILS jail in the next state over. They're fire people, financial independence, retire early, they don't spend a penny on anything, expect everyone else to subsidize their lifestyle, and openly judge anyone else that doesn't live life the exact way that they do. They go to bed 7:30 p.m., so they expect everyone to have dinner at 5, and then be quiet when they go to sleep. They then get up at 4 a.m., to work out, walk the dog, but don't give the same courtesy to anyone else because it's our fault we're sleeping so late. Story 50, I've got 2. First one, I was pretty young, so like 67, my mom was friends with this woman called Louise, and she had a daughter that was about my age. Mom didn't really know Louise all that well because they met through mutual friends, but the daughter and I got along. So we arranged a sleepover at her place. The house was fine, but I started feeling pretty homesick. Because I didn't know these people very well, I walked out into the lounge to try to get Louise, the mom's attention, to maybe ring my mom so I could leave, but before I could speak, I saw her and her boyfriend on the couch. Lol. Anyways, that exact boyfriend was later found to be molesting my little friend, and they mom ended up becoming a lesbian in the future. Second one, I was 18, met up with this guy that I'd been talking online to for a while. We had mutual friends. We took the train to his house, which he shared with an older couple who had a few kids. It was legit a trash house. Absolutely filthy. McDonald's sundae with ice cream still in it was used as an ashtray. It stunk so bad, and the kids were just like playing on the floor in dirty nappy while their fat, lazy, stinky parents watched TV and did drugs. I left so quick. I didn't know he or where I was going would have drugs going down, and he was trash too. He kept ringing up his underage ex-GF and abusing her verbally. I didn't know very much about him, obviously. Story 51, date 3. Suggest my place or his for makeout opportunities. We opt for his as I would need a day or 2 to clean mine to new date standards. He does warn that he had a plumbing leak and things are in boxes. No probs. Construction home renovation is my jam. Show up. Wave of BO hits me. Dude wasn't dirty and otherwise seemed well-groomed. Just semi-retired. Where he woke up, made coffee, and did hobby programming, so in his mind he didn't sweat and therefore didn't need a shower daily. He obviously had no idea that his house reeked. Then there was the clutter. There wasn't an uncluttered surface for me to put my purse down, go to den. Flashback to my college years because a blanket is nailed on one of the 2 windows, couch covered in a sheet, and coffee table has paper, tissues on it, and under it. It wasn't filth like food beverage containers, just lots of messy papers with a few tissues. Chairs in living room have on them. Can't sit to visit. Dining room table, not even wiped down. I don't think I'm materialistic, but make a freaking effort when you invite a date come over, especially when said date has indicated a desire to be more intimate and is a possibility. Air out your place, pick up the clutter, and wipe down the GD table if you've invited someone over for dinner. Otherwise, you're telling your date that you don't care for his or her comfort level, or worse, that something is wrong with your mental state. I was only willing to hang out in the dining room and hooped him in Scrabble. In hindsight, glad we chose his place first.